Welcome to the Waldorf GridIron Club Podcast, your home for all things football at Waldorf University, the best small college football experience in America. Hosted by Andy Buffington and me, Troy Thompson, from the secret gridiron bunker beneath Bolstorff Field. Now, let's meet the captains of today's podcast.
Good morning.
All right, welcome to this edition of the Waldorf GridIron Podcast. This is our homecoming edition, and for you listeners out there, Troy and I have a very special guest for everybody today. And Troy lined this up, and I couldn't be more excited and honored that David Bolstorff, Coach David Bolstorff, is joining us today from his home. And Coach, thanks so much for taking some time to visit with us. And so that Waldorf, we can understand more about how we got here today.
Well, you're welcome. Welcome very much.
David Bolstorff, the field that the Warriors play on is named after him, and very appropriately. From 1965 to, I believe, 2006, Coach, you led the Warriors program, and you saw a lot of things in your tenure with Waldorf.
Yes, lots of things. I didn't start out as Bob Bungham was the coach when I first came in '65. I came solely as the college chaplain with everything that suggested, but football had always been a part of my life, so I asked Bob if I could help out, and of course in those days I think we just had two coaches, Bob and myself. So that led to, I think, about 3 years. And then I think the third year, Bob had a heart attack the first day of practice in fall camp.
Oh, my goodness.
And he survived, but there was no more coaching for him. So that's when when they asked me to take over as head coach. So it didn't start out that way, but that's kind of the way it ended up, I guess.
Now, Coach, I looked into some of the annuals, the old yearbooks at Waldorf, and I did see a picture of you in 1966 as an assistant coach, kind of kneeling or squatting down, and Coach Bungham was talking. And is it just me, or did everybody in that time period look like Vince Lombardi? Because he was addressing the team, and he just had the fedora and the overcoat and then the glasses. It just looked like he was, I don't know what he was saying, but it seemed like everybody in the mid to late 60s, to me anyway, looked like a version of Vince Lombardi.
I don't know if we call him Vince Lombardi, but he was a very fine person. No yelling, shouting, or screaming, but he got his message across, and he had some fine football players and some fine teams.
So in 1965, when you did arrive as the chaplain and the counselor for Waldorf, that was also, the mid-60s was also a period for Waldorf of pretty impressive expansion, just lots of things going on. What was it like to be at Waldorf in that time as they expanded and really kind of really grew into something completely different?
Yeah, I think when I first came, if I can remember correctly, I have to scrape some rust off my recall here, but there was Johnson London and Tanner Hall. And Solveson and Rasmussen and Thorson. And then they used a house for development. And wouldn't you know, there was a jail right in the campus, kind of where a new library is now.
Right.
Really? I didn't know that.
And that was kind of it. And then, if I remember correctly, the campus center came into being. And then they moved ahead, I think, to the science building.
Oh, right.
And from there, things gradually expanded. And even after I left, I think about 17 years ago now, they had some great facilities. So it had been slowly, but moving upward and expanding, and has become a great little small college university now.
Well, and that's what they're trying to get with. We're trying to promote an image of the best small college football experience in America. That's a tall order to fill, but if you're going to do something, go big, I guess. And that's what we've been perpetuating and helping perpetuate for the program. And I think that's obviously something that, I don't know if that was at the top of your mind, but it was certainly something that you were building one way or the other.
Well, to me, anyway, there's nothing like the integration of a small college and a small community. It just, for me, and that's kind of, I started out for 1 year at the University of Minnesota, and then I transferred there from there to St. Olaf, and it was kind of like that. St. Olaf and Northfield now is Waldorf and Forest City, and that, to me, there's just absolutely nothing like the integration of a small college and small community. It's a great atmosphere.
Yeah, Coach, that's one of the things that our the current kids, our players here on the roster at Waldorf University continue to talk about is, like you had during your tenure, these kids coming from all over the nation, not knowing really much about Forest City, Iowa. But once they get here, this community really does embrace them. Troy and I continue to talk about, while you're here, you're our kids. We're going to take care of you and make sure you have that great experience. And those things that you just mentioned really have rung true throughout the ages. And these kids they love Forest City. They love Waldorf. They become part of us. And that's been such a feather in our cap, if you will, for this program. And, the fact that the kids love it, it means the world to us for sure.
Well, yeah, it was always interesting, we you got kids coming from a long way away, and huge communities, some from farms, some from great big cities, and it's different for them, to like coming from Columbus, Ohio to Forest City. That's a big step.
Yeah.
And to make them feel at home, is a great task. But they do, and the learning goes both ways. From the small town to you learn about big city life or different country life. I remember the old Lutheran Leaders Program. That was just a wonderful program where you got firsthand experience of listening and the kids from China and Japan and Africa and all over the place. So it's a great experience for both ways, for both Forest City and the kids coming from wherever they come from.
So, yeah, agreed. The diversity that Waldorf offers our little town in north central Iowa is really exceptional because it exposes these kids to small town life, and it exposes these kids from small towns to other people, other ways of thinking, other ways of life. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a classroom in itself.
It really is. It really is.
Coach, you did sorry about it. If folks that are listening to this podcast, Andy's on the road visiting family, and Coach is in northern Minnesota, and I'm here in the underground bunker. So we're getting that's why it sounds a little bit different this week. But Coach, speaking on what Andy was just talking about, the wealth of diversity that Waldorf brings to the community, the value of football to the community, and the relationship with Waldorf to Forest City. But in 1967, so I went back and I looked at the yearbooks. In 1967, Coach, there were no black kids on the football team. And then in 1969, you were head coach, and there were 3. And one of them was a guy that we have actually talked about on this podcast, the guy who holds the single-season interception record, number 42, Alvino Bean Milner.
Alvino Milner, yeah.
Yeah. Can you tell us about how Alvino came to Forest City? And I don't know if you have any.
Bean?
Yeah, Bean. That's right. It was even in the yearbook.
Bean. He was a character out of Columbus, Ohio, running back. Interesting fellow. I can remember the incident with him and Bob Bachman, a good incident, not a. He would always go around the dorm, and I believe it was in Johnson, London. He would always go around the dorm saying, "I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man." And Bob Bachman, he was a great football player and a great wrestler, but he had some traits, and one of them was that he would be going to bed at 9:00 at night. And the story goes, I wasn't there, but the story goes from the other players that Bean was going around the dorm saying, "I'm the man, I'm the man, I'm the man," and woke Bob up, and he came out the door and grabbed Bean by the neck and put him up against the wall, and Bean's comment was, "No, you're the man, you're the man, you're the man." But he was that kind of kid.
Yeah.
And it wasn't an arrogant, type thing. It was just both of them having a little fun with each other.
Right. He does still hold that record for, I think, Andy, do you remember if it's 12 or 13 single season interceptions that he's got?
It was a single season. I believe it was like 14 or 15 interceptions. Yeah, and we had a young man by the name of McCoy Yackel who holds the 4-year career interception record. McCoy is a senior this year on Waldorf, and we had him in on the podcast, and we were saying that, hey, this Alvino Milner is he's the guy that you need to beat. You need to get that 15, 16 interceptions next year. I think McCoy probably has 2 or 3 so far this season, but he's got a big hill to climb if he's going to get close to Bean's record.
Yeah. I think that's going to stand.
Like I say, I don't remember the record, but I remember the kid well. So, every record, I guess, is made to be broken. So
I think that one will stand for a while.
That's the way life goes.
It is.
That's
and so you touched so many lives, not just on the football field, but on campus. But do you have some kids that you just always fondly remember from your days coaching or being the chaplain at Waldorf? Is there some kids that really stand out?
I don't know if there is one, and I think I remember. Maybe age has something to do with it.
Sure.
You remember maybe more the early kids than you do the later kids.
Right.
But I don't know if there's one particular one that stands out, except, DJ. DJ was a player and then a coach and has become a good friend.
And that's
DJ and Dan Hansen and Brian Grunsky. Those 3 people played for me and became coaches and have become very, very good friends and still are. So I suppose in that sense they are the ones who would stand out the most because of the time that we have spent together.
It's funny that you said that, Coach, because while I was doing this research and I was looking at Alvino's picture in that class of 69, I also saw a number 80 who was a wide receiver, and that's a young Denny Jerome that you just mentioned. And, of course, you've got an athletic field named after you in your honor, and now so does Denny Jerome with Denny Jerome Court and the Denny Jerome Activities, and I can tell you, Athletic Center. And both of you are pretty humble, good men, and not particularly interested in talking about how things are named. But thanks to Denny for, by the way, putting us in contact with you so that we could have this conversation.
DJ was and is an interesting story. He came from Salina, Ohio. I think he rode the bus for like 24 hours to get to Fort City, and we met him like 1 o'clock in the morning, getting off the bus, and put him in a motel for about 4 hours, and then he came over to the house for breakfast, and then we went up to the campus. And because the campus wasn't very much in those days, we, in the locker room, et cetera, wasn't very much. We kind of hesitated showing him too much, because we wanted him to get him there. And if you remember, maybe you don't remember, the old field down across the highway, next to the sewage disposal plant.
Yeah, Pamela Park now.
Yeah. But we took him around campus, and he and his friend got back on the bus and left. And lo and behold, he decided to come to Waldorf, which was a blessing for us, and I think hopefully it was a blessing for him as well. And he's ever since that bus ride, he's been there ever since.
Well, he and his family continues to do great things here in town. That makes me wonder, Coach. You mentioned that the football field was down, it would be Pamela Park now, and next to Highway 69. Of course, when I was growing up, you lived on Park Street, which was it's not really a bluff, but it's a good hill that overlooked Pamela Park. Was that a reason why you selected that place up there so you could see the football field?
Yeah, when we first came, we rented a small house, and then we were able to purchase that house on Park Street. And the good thing about that was not only did it overlook the highway, but it was close to the swimming pool. So
yeah,
our children had jobs all the way until they went to college. So my wife was a fine swimmer, so she taught our kids how to swim, and that got them good life-saving jobs, and they only had to walk about a half a block to work.
Right.
Works out very well.
Yeah.
So, Coach, one of the things that, you talk about bringing in Denny Jerome to Waldorf. What was recruiting like back when you first started? Was there a lot of travel, or was there a lot of phone calls, or how exactly did you do that? Because you brought in some amazing talent to Waldorf as a junior college, and then even in the transition into a 4-year program. What was the recruiting process like for you, if you can recall?
Well, I know when I first started, the other teams, maybe not all, but most of the other teams in the league that we were in were giving out, and I don't know how many, but a good number of scholarships, and bringing in some really, really, Division I players who couldn't go to Division I because of their high school grades. Teams like Centerville and Ellsworth and Fort Dodge, and here we were with no scholarships whatsoever. Our players were from mostly Iowa, southern Minnesota, and a few from Ohio, because there was, and I don't recall his name, but he was there when I took over, admissions counselor from the state of Ohio. So we would get a few students from there. And we got pretty well pounded there for a couple of years, and I just, went to the administration and said, either have to get in or get out, one of the two. And they wanted to stay in. And I don't recall, I think early on, about after the second year or so I was there, I don't recall the exact number. That I think they gave us like 4 or 6 scholarships that we could divide up, as much as we could divide up. And so we started, basically myself, started recruiting, still southern Minnesota and Iowa, but we expanded to out of state, primarily Ohio. And we began by recruiting by phone, and then we would travel. I think when Pshaw was the admissions director, we would travel to Ohio for a couple weeks. Probably, if I remember correctly, in January, and spend time in some of the cities, Salina and Columbus, and it just expanded. Most of it was by phone, but you would get in the recruiting Iowa. You'd get in the car early in the morning during vacations, or sometimes on Thursday, because on Thursday we had student chapel, and just leave at 4 in the morning and try and go as far as you can and recruit backwards to Forest City. And I think the place of Waldorf became pretty high in the eyes of some of the Division I schools because of our academic standings, not just football, but academic standings. And they knew that they would, if they got a player, wanted a player, and got a player, that they would get a good young man who was a good football player, but also a student who, got good grades and could finish out the next 2 years, or however many it was, at the place they were recruited to.
Yeah, and that Ohio connection lasted for many, many years. When I was at Waldorf in the late 80s, early 90s, guys like Pat Jackson from Columbus, Corey Ray from Columbus, Kevin Ingram from Lima, Ohio, Eric Lindsay from Cleveland area, those guys, and they went on, like Pat Jackson went on to play at Kansas State. Kevin Ingram went on, played defense for Ole Miss, things like that. So yeah, that Ohio connection had always been strong throughout your time at Waldorf. So that's interesting how that all worked out.
Yeah, it was, and we got the latter years too. We expanded from there to Milwaukee and Madison, and that helped our expansion as well. And then you kind of chose the states that played good football, but didn't have a lot of junior college colleges there, and so we got a few players from Georgia, and we even got a couple players from Florida, if I remember correctly. I remember a guy they called the Rock. I don't remember what his name was, but he was like a rock as far as a football player goes. So yeah, it was a lot of hard work, a lot of time on the phone, a lot of time in the car. But I think the word got around that Waldorf was really an excellent, which it was, an excellent junior college program with a good education that didn't lower its standards to the player. It made the player come up to the standards that they needed to be. So, yeah, we were proud of that, and we got some good kids and some good players.
Some of your players went on to play for the NFL, Coach. Any idea how many? I don't know either, so I'm just guessing or spitballing.
Let me see. Henry Waxter from Western Dubuque High School came to us, went to Nebraska, and was recruited by the Chicago Bears, and got a Super Bowl ring. Bruce Klosterman from Dyersville came to us, went to Iowa, then went from Iowa to South Dakota State, and then got drafted by Denver and played for Denver for 10 years, if I remember correctly.
Wow.
Derek McCready from Canada played for us. Went to Ohio State, got drafted by Detroit Lions. I think played for them only a year and then went back to Canada. And if I remember correctly, played for Edmonton for a long time, 10 years or so. Now is a high school coach in Canada. Ian Beckles, also from Canada, came to us. Went to Indiana. Got drafted by Tampa Bay and played his whole career at Tampa Bay. And now I believe is a sports commentator in Tampa Bay. Let me see. I think a person named Dave Pesky from Faribault played for us, played for Northern Illinois, I believe, and then got a tryout anyway from the Bears. And Pat Jackson had a tryout for Green Bay Packers. I think he was with them for a year.
Yeah, he was.
Let's see if I can remember anyone else. I think that's it. If I remember somebody else, I'll break in and let you know.
Okay. Well, so let's change gears a little bit there. I mean, we call you coach. That's obviously what you're in many ways known for. But you're also you were also the chaplain at Waldorf for almost 40 years. That's what brought you to the college. In 1994, you published a book. It's called Reflections from the Sideline. For those who haven't read it, I bought it. I was at Waldorf when it came out, so I felt obliged to get it. It's been on my on and off my bookshelf for ever since that time. And I have a couple of questions for you. The first one is if anybody's looked at when they look at your book, it's published differently. You write in a series of, I would say, descending or cascading lines. Why is that?
Probably because that's the way I think.
Okay.
Probably that's the way. I used to read a person named Gerald Frost. He was a professor at the seminary way back. And he would write like that. And it really caught my attention. And I didn't try to follow him, but it's kind of the way I think. So that's the way I write. Whether good or bad, that's just kind of the way I put thoughts and words down on paper.
Well, it's very interesting. It's different than just a regular book you pick up and read. Obviously, this is a compilation of your messages at chapel and thoughts on messages and that type of thing. And I just found that very interesting and also very helpful, to be completely honest. I want to turn to one, if you don't mind, if I can quote you from your own book, and this is important. I think your experience as a coach, as a counselor, as a reverend, the message that you are giving and have given to young men and women for so many years, and then it's just very well put. In a message that says to live with myself, and I'll tell you, Coach, that one is cracked open in the book that I have from you. It falls open to this, and this is what it says. I'm gonna read a few lines from it, and it says, "We have to learn to live with lots of things during our lives. We have to learn to live with growing up, and that's not always easy. We have to learn to live with growing old, and that's not always easy. And we have to learn to live with all the years in between. And that's not always easy either. We have to learn to live with hurt. We have to learn to live with tragedy. We have to learn to live with disappointment, with success, with failure. We learn to work around them. We learn to work through them, and sometimes learn to pretend they don't even exist. But I would like to remind all of us that although we all learn to live with lots of things during our lives, for certain periods of time, to certain degrees, there is one thing we all have to learn to live with, and that is we have to learn to live with ourselves every moment, every year of our life, And that's the most important and the most difficult. Still very true today.
Oh yes, yeah, it's true for every year and every person, I think.
Well,
wow.
Yeah, overcoming adversity is, that's football. That's life, and you saw it on the gridiron and off, and that message continues.
Well, yeah, football is, from my point of view, is the greatest team sport that there is.
I agree.
And you learn so much about life through the playing of football. If you give your all to it. You learn how to win, you learn how to lose. You learn how to live with one another. You learn how to do your job, like Belichick says. You learn how to get up when you get knocked down, just like the life we live in. So it's a great game and a great teacher. Life is not easy sometimes, and football is not easy sometimes, maybe a lot of the time. But if you learn how to give your all and play it correctly, you'll learn an awful lot about life and the living of life.
Coach, very wise words for all of us. I just wish that we could take these words that we're capturing this morning and send it to the team that is preparing for a game this afternoon, because just those things that you just said will ring so true into the hearts of those young men. And it seems to me that you used football as a means to an end, that football was just it was just a portal for you to transform these lives of these young men that you came into contact with, so that they could move on through their life, and you taught them these lessons, so that at the end of the day, they come out on the other side of this thing called life a lot more enriched and fulfilled.
Yeah, if one is a Christian, you cannot separate life from faith or faith from life. You cannot do that and be authentic. People do, but they're not authentic. And they have to understand that a player has to, because football players, they get stereotyped quite a bit. And preachers get stereotyped quite a bit too, but a player has to understand, don't give in to the stereotype. Be your own person. Be the person that God wants you to be. Just do not give in to the stereotype. Give in to the person that God wants each person to be, and to find that, you go to the Bible, you go to Scripture, you listen, you read, you pray, but you try to the best of your ability, and we all fail some, to become the person that God wants you to be. And so you don't do it as a plan, you just do it as who you are. I've always said, if you keep in touch with God, you can't see kind of where you're going, but when you look back, you can see where God's put your feet every single step of the way. So that would be, because it's not whether you end up as an NFL player. It's whether you end up as a good person, a good doctor, a good lawyer, a good teacher, a good whatever. That's what counts. Living a good life.
Yeah, very well put. And Coach, you will, whether you remember it or not, you'll always be a very special part of my family's life, because back in 1994, you actually officiated mine and my wife's wedding. I don't know if you remember that or not.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So you'll always have, even if that wouldn't have occurred, you'll always have a special place in our family's heart.
Well, thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Well, I'll tell you, Andy, he remembers everything. When I first initiated contact with him, he responded, which made me so happy. It's like, oh, thank goodness he's responded, and because who knows, he doesn't know me from Adam, except he does. He says, "Oh, Troy, good to hear from you. Looks like things are going well." And I still remember driving you and Tony down to Space Camp in 1986 in the back of a pickup truck, which is true.
Oh, yeah, we had a Toyota, kind of a maroon Toyota pickup with a cab on the back, and Tony wanted to go to Space Camp, and then we found out you wanted to go to Space Camp, so the cheapest way for us to get there was to drive. So my wife and I drove, and you guys were in the back end. I think we had a big sleeping bag back there, so you could be wouldn't be such a hard ride. And then we got you down there and left you off, and then we went to Florida to spend about 3 days on the beach, and came back and picked you up. But you guys had a good time, and that was the most important thing.
We sure
did. Not
did.
just a good time, but you also had an interesting time.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, we made the newspaper. We had our little astronaut jumpsuits, and I'll tell you what, I still have that astronaut jumpsuit, but folks got to realize that this was a different time when you could travel across the country with two kids in the back of the pickup under a topper. Those were the days.
Yeah.
Well, Coach, I just want to thank you so much for spending the time that you've given us to talk about Waldorf football, to talk about life, a little bit of history, a lot of wisdom. I know it meant a lot to me. I know that the listeners that we have, this will come out, by the way, on Friday, just before homecoming 2022. And we're so thankful for all of the things that you have given the program and the community. And we just think very highly of you. And we're just so appreciative that we get to call you part of the Waldorf GridIron family.
Well, thank you very much for asking me. And, Waldorf and Forest City did a lot for us, too. So it was a reciprocal.
Well, Coach Bolstorff, again, I echo Troy's sentiments. Thank you so much for your time, for what you've done to this little place on earth that we like to call Waldorf University now. The things that you have done there are remarkable, and we will be forever remembered.
Thank you guys for what you're doing. Yeah, for who you are and what you're doing. It's important work for the kids. It's important for the kids to hear from different people. So thank you for the work that you're doing.
No, you're welcome.
No, it's our pleasure.
Absolutely.
So we'll go ahead and wrap up, and thank you for your time. And for Troy Thompson, this is Andy Buffington thanking the Reverend, the Coach David Bolstorff, Waldorf legend, for taking some time. And thanks, everyone, for listening to this episode, this edition of the Waldorf GridIron Podcast. And forever and always, go Warriors.
Thank you very much, Andy and Troy.
Thanks, Coach.
You can join the Waldorf GridIron Club today by sending a check to the Waldorf GridIron Club, P.O. Box 125, Forest City, Iowa 50436.
Or message us by visiting and like our Facebook page, Waldorf GridIron Club. Or email us at waldorfgridironclub@gmail.com.
Or it's as easy as clicking on the Support the Show link on your phone. Become a patron of the GridIron Club by choosing to support the program monthly. $100 is the Black membership at $9 a month.
The $250 level is Purple at $25 a month.
$500 is the Warrior membership at $45 a month.
The All-Conference level is $750 or $65 a month.
$1,000 is the All-American membership at $85 a month.
The Champion level is $125 a month, and that's $1,500 a year.
$2,500 is the Hall of Fame membership.
The Waldorf GridIron Club Podcast is hosted by Andy Buffington and me, Troy Thompson. Produced by Sunnyside Farmstead Studios in beautiful rural Forest City, Iowa. The music is by Christian Leo. The Waldorf GridIron Club is a non-profit 501c3 organization dedicated to football student-athletes of Waldorf University. Our mission is to assist the program in maintaining the best small college football experience in America.